Okay, so hi everybody, good afternoon everyone, and good evening from those in Europe. I hope all of you are well physically, mentally, and taking care of yourself and each other. So today we have as guest Dr. Nicolas Rambaud. He's a professor at the Institute of Celestial Mechanics and Ephemeris Calculation of the Paris Observatory. Currently, he studies the interior equilibrium shape and rotation of objects in the solar system, from moon, asteroids, and up to trans-Neptunian objects. His work has contributed to the discovery of a possible internal ocean in Mars. And Dr. Rambaud is also a member of the Meteorix project, a CubeSat mission dedicated to the detection of meteors and space debris. And today, Dr. Rambaud will give a talk on information of interior properties from refined shape analysis, example of TNOs and Phoebe. So please, Nicolas, you may share your screen and start as you wish.
Yes. Okay. So I'm sharing the screen. It's okay. Do you see my screen?
Yes,
okay.
Perfect. You can go.
Okay. So good afternoon, everybody, and I thank you very much for this organization, for the organizer to inviting me at this seminar. And I am very glad to talk to you today by video conference, even if I rather to be present physically, especially in Brazil. And I hope that we will be able to meet physically soon after the pandemic. And today, I'm glad to talk to you about the work that we realized with my co-authors. And we work about the shape analysis of trans-Neptunian object and Phoebe. And I will try to show you how can we relate the measurement of the shape to the entire structure of these bodies. The theory of figure deals with the external shape of celestial bodies, and it is one of the three pillars of geodesy, with rotation and the gravity. And the main question addressed by the equilibrium figure is to be able to identify the main forces acting on the shape of the body, and also what is the stability of this equilibrium figure. It is a hard question that dates to Poincaré, and but there are a renewal of interest to this question thanks to the International Astronomical Union, where they propose a new taxonomy for the classification of the planet, of the bodies of the solar system. In one part, there is the planets and the dwarf planet, where the bodies are assumed to be hydrostatic equilibrium, and they say nearly round. And they distinguish these bodies to the small bodies. So it is important to identify what is the frontier between the dwarf planet and the small bodies. Today, we don't have an estimation of the limit radius between the two bodies that depend on the composition of the body, if it is icy-rich body or rock bodies composed of silicate, but also it depends on the history of the body and especially the thermal history of the body in order to know if it is relaxed or not. And here you have an illustration that's showing some of the TNO, and here you have some asteroids. You can see that there is also a diversity in the shape. They appear a round shape, but indeed they are oblate. And also there is OMEA, that is an elongated body. And the third point, that is the point that we are interested, it is that the internal structure is reflected in the shape, assuming that the body is relaxed to hydrostatic equilibrium. And there is an example here with OMEA, where the shape interesting people. And if you assume that it is purely homogeneous, you cannot explain the shape. And people assume that it is a differentiated body. But the models are not in the error bars of the observations. So there are still open questions. For the presentation, the outline is first I will talk quickly about the observations. And I will state about the equilibrium figure, that is the pivotal point for these studies. And then I will show you application to the trans-Neptunian object and for Phoebe, that is an irregular satellite around Saturn. As you know, the Kuiper belt is located beyond the orbit of Neptune and is composed of icy-rich bodies that are remnants of the formation of the solar system.
André, Isaac do céu. Que foi?
And so they are remnants of the formation of the solar system. And here you have an illustration of a non-trans-Neptunian object, where at the scale you have the diameter of the moon. That is just here. If you assume that the radius is larger than 400 kilometers, you can be suppose that the bodies are in hydrostatic equilibrium if there is enough temperature that the bodies to be relaxed. And this TNO was observed by the Space Telescope, Spitzer and Herschel in infrared. They are observed by the HST telescope. New Horizon, the space mission, explored the Pluto system. It was just a flyby. And also there is the Earth-Ground telescope. As you know very well, there is the stellar occultation method, that is a very powerful method to obtain the shape of the body. And so the method consists to measure the transit time of the TNO in front of the star. And the accuracy for one chord is 2.5 kilometers. And if you extrapolate for the global shape, you arrive to accuracy about a tenth of a kilometer. To obtain the silhouette of the body, you need to make a measurement on the path of the shadow on the Earth. Also, to obtain the equilibrium figure of the bodies, you need information on the density and also on the rotation of the body. And to obtain information on the rotation, you need a light curve. So you need also to combine this kind of measurement. In many studies, the Maclaurin-Jacobi ellipsoid are a proxy. Alors, the Maclaurin is the equilibrium figure solution for a body when you assume that the body is homogeneous. And Maclaurin is an oblate body. And Jacobi is a homogeneous solution for equilibrium figure of a body, where the body is triaxial. But if you are looking with large bodies, like Pluto, Eris, and larger than 400 kilometers, alors here you have Ceres with 470 kilometers of radius. So these bodies are very large bodies, so they could be differentiated. And in that case, I will show you that Maclaurin will not be the good model anymore. The second class of objects that I will discuss with only one example is Phoebe. And Phoebe is an irregular satellite of Saturn. And it is the largest satellite of Saturn. Its radius is about 100 kilometers. So this is 1/4 for the size of the TNO of 400 kilometers. As it is an irregular satellite, it is certainly captured. satellite, and the origin of this body is debated. It could be a trans-Neptunian object or a C-type object coming from the asteroid belt. Phoebe has been visited by the Cassini space mission in June 2004, where they did a flyby close to the satellite. So they obtained these images with a very high accuracy, and they could read what it is called the DTM, that is a digital terrain model. So this is a model of a shape. And very recently, Altair Gomes Jr., that is present here, performed the first occultation of an irregular satellite. And they obtained impressive results. And they use the shape determined by the Cassini space mission. And by combining these observations from the shape and the occultation observations, they could determine the rotation at a very high accuracy. So it's very interesting to see how can space data and Earth ground data can be combined to obtain a very nice result. And for Phoebe, the idea that I will try to show you is how the shape study can help to identify its origin. Alors, now I will say a word about the equilibrium figure. The equilibrium figure shape of a rotating self-gravitating planet is a classical problem of geodesy that dates back to Newton, and it was studied by many famous mathematicians like Clairaut, Maclaurin, D'Alembert, Poincaré, Chandrasekhar, and Lyapunov, among others. And for a non-spinning body, the theory of hydrostatic equilibrium predicts a spherical shape. Here, alors, it could be surprising, but here this is here is an illustration from Tintin, and here is a water bubble in the International Space Station, and you can see the shape. But if the body is spinning around its north-south axis, you have an action of a centrifugal potential, and the effect is to have a body that is elongated along its equatorial plane. So you have an oblate shape, where A is the equatorial radius, and C is the polar radius. But this shape, that is an oblate shape, and in the case of a homogeneous body, the solution is called the Maclaurin solution, is not the only one, especially if you spin up the body, or more exactly, if you add angular momentum to the system. You will have a different equilibrium figure, and this figure is a bifurcation. Here, this is an illustration that comes from this website, and they use the Earth as a proxy. And omega is the rotational velocity, L is the angular momentum. This is a normalized quantity. And here you have an oblate body with a Maclaurin shape. In this simulation, they assume that the interior is homogeneous. You have a bifurcation point, and at this point, the equilibrium figure becomes more triaxial. It is better illustrated by this view. And if you carry on to add angular momentum, you have another bifurcation that is a piriform, and you can see that it is not symmetric anymore. And the piriform, or the pear shape, was predicted by Poincaré. So it was and the end of this animation. At present, however, if you have differentiated bodies, the ellipsoid, that is the oblate and that describe the Maclaurin and Jacobi and the piriform solution, could not be applied anymore. So that is the equilibrium figure is not an ellipsoid anymore. And this is known as the Amis theorem in 1889. And in that case, for differentiated body, there is no analytical solutions that are available. So you have to find another way to solve the equilibrium figure. And in our case, we use, this is a Clairaut equation. So this is an integral differential equation describing the equilibrium figure of a self-gravitating body and a rotating body. And the point is that this is a perturbative equations, where we develop the equation at the first, second, and third order. And the small parameter of the equation is related to the centrifugal potential. Indeed, it is the centrifugal potential divided by the gravitational potential. So this is the ratio between these two accelerations. And we use an approach that has been developed by Lanzano for the Earth and by Frédéric Chambard. And we apply that also for Ceres. And I will show you for the TNO and for Phoebe. And here, this is an illustration for assuming almost two same bodies. For the homogeneous case, the Maclaurin, you will have a more elongated body than in the differentiated body, simply because you have a more massive core that prevent a big effect of the elongation. One of the questions when we want to apply this differentiated computation, numerical solutions to the bodies is to know what is the accuracy. So what is the order that we have to go. In order to do that, we compute the numerical Clairaut solutions for homogeneous case, and we compare with the Maclaurin solution. In this figure, you have the eccentricity, where the eccentricity is related to the polar axis and the equatorial axis. So this is the shape of the body. And here you have the rotation of the body, the gravitational constant, and the density of the body. Here it's a constant density because it is a homogeneous case. The violet curve represents the Maclaurin solution, and we compute the Clairaut solution at the first, the second, and the third order. So what you can see as expected, if you go to higher order, you obtain a better agreement to the predicted solution. Now the question it is what is the value for the trans-Neptunian object? So there is two extremum case, that is Salacia and Makemake. So that you can see that for Salacia, we will not be able to resolve all the application because we obtain a large departure. And here you have Makemake where the departure is okay. And for the other TNO, the difference is pretty small. The second question is how to quantify more exactly the difference in terms of the radius in the shape. Here, just to give you an idea of the solution, here you have the equatorial radius. Here is the polar radius. Here is the radius that is the equivalent radius for the volume, equivolumetric radius. And you can see that I minus C is proportional to the mean to that mean radius. And here in the terms, you have epsilon, that is a small parameters. And epsilon is directly related to that omega 2 by P0, that is this quantity. And you can see that is order 1, order 2, and order 3. So the next step was to compute the departure for the equatorial and the polar radius between the Maclaurin solution and the Clairaut solution. So here this is the departure in kilometers. Here this is the eccentricity. The thin line is for the equatorial radius and the cross line is for the polar radius. This is the first, the second, and the third order. And what we want is to obtain an accuracy of about 2.5 kilometers. That is 1/10 of the accuracy for the shape of the ellipsoid from the paper of Felipe Braga Ribas, and you obtain an eccentricity of 0.7. So that will be the limit. We don't go for the numerical solution beyond that limit. Then the second step is to make a selection of a large trans-Neptunian object. So in this figure, we represented the radius as a function of the period coming from the measurement, and you have some error bars. And we selected bodies that are larger than 400 kilometers in order to be able to assume that they are at the hydrostatic equilibrium. And we took a rotation period below 13 hours in order to have a significant effect. So we excluded Eris, that is rotating very slowly. Then in the rest of the bodies, there is Ceres that has been studied very carefully in the case of the Dawn space mission. And also there is OMEA, but OMEA, like I show you, it's a Jacobi solutions. And at present, our model compute the axisymmetric solution. So we focus on these 5 bodies. That means Orcus, Sedna, Kawar, Salacia, and Makemake. And the rotation period is determined from a light curve. Then an important point is to examine the density, because the parameters depend directly on the mean density of the body. In this figure, you have the radius as a function of the density. In red, this is the bodies that we have selected. And you can see that we know some densities because this is a trans-Neptunian object where a satellite has been determined. And by tracking the motion of a satellite, you are able to determine the mass of a trans-Neptunian object. And so to deduce the density, if you compute also the volume. So here you have error bars for the bodies. And there are 2 TNO, Sedna and Makemake, where there is no satellite, where no satellite have been determined. So the uncertainty is from all the sides of the density. What is interesting is that at present there is no clear relationship between the density and the radius, but Barr and Schwamb propose identify a relationship between the low density trans-Neptunian object, around 1.32 gram per centimeter cube, and the high density, and they could correlate that to the bodies that have a large and a small satellite. And for the low density, they have a large satellite, so they argue in favor of a low grazing collision, whereas for the high density, you have a small satellite, so there are more catastrophic collisions. So it's interesting, interesting direction for to explain the density and the size of its bodies. So the Kuiper belt objects are created from a mixture of volatile ices, carbonaceous matters, and rocks. And in the early evolutions, the KBO was largely the result of heating due to radioactive decay. And the most important source was the aluminum 26, that is a short-lived radioisotope. And so the bodies are able to be at hydrostatic equilibrium. Here, this is an illustration of some interior structure for TNO. But in our case, we explore only simple 2-layer models, where we assume that the bodies is composed of a silicate mantle of 3,000 kilograms per meter cube and an icy crust of 920 kilograms per meter cube. And to be able to compare with the two-layer models for the 5 TNO that we have selected, we will use what is called the silicate mass fraction. That is where the relationship is here with the mean density, the density of the silicate, the density of the ice. And what you can see is that this ratio depends on the mean density according to this law. And if sigma is equal to 0, that means your body is a pure icy satellite. And if sigma is equal to 1, your body is a pure silicate body of 3000 kilograms per meter cube. Then we compute the solution of the flattening for a range of sigma between 0 and 1, and also for a rotation period between 6 and 13 hours. The colors represent the value that we call the nu3, where nu is A minus C divided by R. Like I show you, the difference between the equatorial and the polar radius is proportional to the mean radius. So here it is independent of the radius, and you can superpose the 5 trans-Neptunian objects in order to compare and to have an idea of where they are in this plot. And here the white part, it is excluded because it is outside of the limit of 4K. To give you a hint of the value of the flattening, here I show you the color code when you assume the difference between the equatorial and the polar radius for a 500 kilometer body. So you arrive around 100 kilometers and 25 kilometers. So what do you see is that Orcus, Sedna, Kawar, and Makemake and Salacia. Salacia is a very interesting body because it could be very oblate, and then Makemake, Kawar, Sedna, and Orcus. And another way to see this effect is to compare between the Maclaurin and the two-layer models, because the idea behind is to be able to obtain information on the entire structure by looking the shape. So we compare the Maclaurin and the two-layer model. And so this is still the silicate mass fraction as a function of a rotation period. And here this is the difference in the flattening between the Maclaurin and two-layer models. And like previously, I give you the numbers for assuming a 500 kilometer radius. And what do you see is that Salacia could have, it is in that part of the plot where the difference is the most larger. And in this figure, the difference is close to 0 when you are sigma equal to 1. That is normal because in that case, you are a pure silicate body, so you are homogeneous. And here it is 0 for the icy body. And of course, what is interesting is to compare with radius of this trans-Neptunian object. So this is what we did here. And here this is still a sigma, that is the silicate mass fraction. And here this is the difference between the equatorial and the polar radius. This is for Kawar. And here you have the Maclaurin solutions with the density that the range of density that has been determined. And here, this is the solution for a differentiate body of Kawar. So you can see that you have a gap between the two. And if you superpose with a present uncertainty of about 25 kilometers, we are close to the uncertainty. So by cumulating observations, notably thanks to Gaia missions, the error bars of the observations could be reduced. And certainly, we could begin to have an idea of where we are in this plot. And there are recent observations of Kawar, so it will be very interesting to be able to compare. We play the same game with the other trans-Neptunian object. And so here you have Orcus, again Kawar, you have Sedna, Salacia, and Makemake. And of course, what you can see is for Makemake and Salacia, the difference could be very large. So there are a very special target for determination of the shape. Of course, there are some caveats to use the measured A minus C. First, we have to assume that you are at a hydrostatic equilibrium. And then also you have to be careful on the presence of various topography, like for example, mountains. And here we computed the expected altitude, the possible altitude of the mountain, where the body can, where the mountain does not collapse to the body. And for Makemake, it's 6 kilometers, and Salacia, it could arrive at 30 kilometers. Also, you could have deep craters that may perturb the interpretation of the shape. And there is a very interesting example by Diaz Oliveira, where here you have two solutions for stellar occultations. And here this is a stellar occultation, and they could fit with a CASM solution or a depression solution. But you can see that here they are sensitive to about 30 kilometers or 7 kilometers in the accuracy. Now I will pass to the second body, that is Phoebe. And the main question for Phoebe, it is what is its origin? So Phoebe is an irregular satellite that has been captured by Saturn. And its origin is debated between a trans-Neptunian object or a C-type object. And the question is important and has been explored by Julie Castillo-Rogez, where they did this plot, that is the density as a function of the diameter. And this plot shows the bulk densities for the mid-sized bodies between 10 kilometers until 1,500 kilometers. And what you can see is that Phoebe is this yellow point. And it is inside the C-type asteroid. And the KBO are in that part of the figure. They have a very low density. Then the KBO that have a density of the value of Phoebe, they are much larger than Phoebe. So it was the question. And the main criteria is the porosity. These bodies have a lot of porosity that lower the density of these bodies. And what is interesting is that the density or the porosity can be related to the timing of the formation. In this plot, you have the formation time in million years. Since the zero of the formation of the solar system, it's a reference value. And at 4, you have million years, you have a strong effect of the aluminum 20, that is a short-lived radioactive isotope that generates a strong heat on the body. And by generating a strong heat of the body, they could remove the porosity, so you have a relaxation. And at the final, you have bodies with a large density. If there is no heat, so if the body is formed after the presence of aluminum 26, in that case, you can keep the porosity and you are in that part of the figure. So the question of the porosity is very important and very intriguing. So the idea was to explore the shape of Phoebe and to build models of the interior by taking into account the porosity and to see if you can find models that match with the equilibrium shape. But Phoebe is a heavily crater like surface, like you can see here. This is images that comes from Cassini. But if you have a different view, you can see that Phoebe is like a bumpy sphere, where you have a Jason crater that is a crater of 100 kilometers of diameter. And the question it is, what is the impact of this craterization on the determination on the equilibrium figure of Phoebe? To do that, we follow the method developed by Castillo-Rojas et al. In 2012. That is a statistical test. And so we build an ellipsoidal shape of Phoebe. On that ellipsoidal shape, where we know exactly the radius of the ellipsoid, we build a synthetic surface of the crater by following the size frequency distribution on Phoebe and by computing the blanket of ejecta. For the blanket ejecta, we follow the relationship for the moon. And here it is an example of that synthetic surface where you have the longitude, the latitude, and here you have the radius of Phoebe. And here you can see the effect of the craters. And what we obtain is that the equatorial radius minus the polar radius has a standard deviation of about 2 kilometers. So this is exactly that was the value obtained by Castillo-Rojas in 2012. So if we want to go deep in the interpretation of the shape of Phoebe, we have to find a new quantity to compare. And the idea was to use a spherical harmonics analysis and to compare only the higher terms. That means the HU0. Here, this is the relation for the radius as function of the spherical harmonics, where A and B are the stock coefficients. And here, this is A20, A30, and A40, to give you an idea of what the shape represents. And A20 represents you the effect of the oblateness. And what we did, we checked that the standard deviation test provides an A20 at 0.5 kilometers. That is much below than the 2 kilometers of A minus C. So say differently, A20 would be the good criteria to extract information of the equilibrium figure of Phoebe, and then we will be able to compare the building models with that A20. In this figure, what I show you, this is the root mean square between the digital terrain model and the building of the spherical harmonic analysis as a function of the degree. And here we go until degree 13. So we perform the frequency, the spherical harmonic analysis. And we will use only the H20 of the observed value at minus 6 kilometers, plus minus 0.5. And we will compute the equilibrium shape models, providing A20, A40, and AC0. And we will compare these two solutions. Here, just to give you an idea, when we compare the spherical harmonic analysis for the shape of Phoebe, and here we plot only the effect of degree 2 and degree 3 on the shape. So you can see that we could smooth the effect of the crater, of the craterization. So the first question was to check if Phoebe is homogeneous or not. So in this figure, you have a density, and here this is the difference between equatorial and polar radius. In blue, this is the determination by Castillo-Rojas in 2012, and in green, this is the new determination. And we compare with the theoretical homogeneous case. And to give you an idea, the cross represents the homogeneous case at the first order in the Clairaut equation. And the black dots are the homogeneous case at the third order. So you can see that there is a difference of 0.6 kilometers. So that highlights the importance to obtain the high orders in the perturbative method. But it is clear that the homogeneous solution is about 11 kilometers, whereas the observation is about 8 kilometers. So you can roll out the homogeneous solution, and you can say that Phoebe's interior is differentiated. Or it can hold the fossil shape, but I will show you that the differentiated should work. Like for the TNO, we build geophysical models. So we build two classes of the models. There are two-layer models and the three-layer models because we are interested by the effect of the porous layer. And for the mantle, we go to undifferentiated mixture of ice and rock until an anhydrous rock-metal mixture. And for the ice layer, we explore the ice between 1,000 and 1,300 kilograms per meter cubed. And when we introduce the porous layer, we have a deep between 10 and 15 kilometers. And indeed, we found that at 20 kilometers, there is no more solutions that are consistent physically. So that gives you a cut of the size of the porous layer. And we explore at 800 and 900 kilograms per meter cube. That means 10–40% of porosity. So for the first case, this is the solution for the two-layer model. Here you have the density of the mantle. Here you have the density of the ice. Here this is the value A20 that we computed. The blue line here, this is that we determine from observation of the shape. And here this is the uncertainty, and you can see that you obtain a lot of models. Indeed, if the density of the model of the mantle, start at 1,900 kilometers, and it can go until a very large value depending on the value of the density of the ice. But if the density of the ice is pretty low, you have a bounding value for the density of the mantle. But a large part of the models are possible. And the density of the ice is not a big constraint on the interior. And for the three-layer body, so this is the same plot with the density of the mantle and density of the ice for 4 cases. In the column, we put the porosity of 800 kilograms per meter cube. That is a 10% porosity. And in the right column, this is 900 kilograms per meter cube, so that is 40% of porosity with a depth of 10 and 15 kilometers. So what you can see is that here we have a part of the plot where there is no physical solutions. So this is the white part. That gives you a strong constraint on the density of the mantle. And finally, the density of the mantle in that case is bounded. Is bounded between about 2,000 kilograms per meter cube and 2,400. You can go a little deep here. And there is no constraint on the density of the ice. But you find a few solutions with that density of the mantle. We also explore if there is a fossil shape. So in that case, here you have the value of A20 that is computed. Here this is the value of observed A20. This is the rotation period. So this is the value for Phoebe. So A20 it's at the expected value, and you can see that there is no big fossil shape. It's just a small shift of less than 1 hour. We also explore the other harmonics. That means A40 and A60. So the harmonics of degree 4 and degree 6. This is as function of the rotation period. This is the observed value. So you can see for the present Phoebe, there is a departure between the expected value and the present value. And A60, you have a strong departure. So that means that A40, A60 are not at the hydrostatic value, and they are polluted by the effect of the crater, of the craterization. So for the conclusion, the accurate observations are very crucial because we need to go at a few kilometers and the BO kilometers to obtain a conclusion on the relationship between the interior as function of the shape. We are identified by Makemake and Salacia are very good candidates. And the signature of the difference between the equatorial and the polar radius reach 40 kilometers. So that's a value that is reachable by the present accuracy. And also for Kawar, it is 16 kilometers. For Phoebe, the analysis reroute the homogeneous interior. And you can see that the porosity layer, if it is present, it is smaller than, it is bounded at 15 kilometers. And the density of the mantle is between 2000 and 2004 kilograms per meter cube. So that means that for Phoebe, there is no large porosity layer, that it is another argument in favor of the C-type origin of a Phoebe. And so this is the analysis of the shape is a powerful method to extract information on the interior property. However, I just recall that there are some caveats of the method because here we're assuming that it is hydrostatic equilibrium, and in the observation you have mountains and craters that may be present. But with Phoebe, we have a method to minimize the effect of the craterization. We are impatient to see more observations, and especially thanks to Gaia for TNO. And also we have some application to other class of bodies, like for example the large asteroids, and we scheduled for INER and regular satellites around the giant planets. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Nicolas. Very nice talk. A lot of interesting results. And now we are open for questions. So let me check if anybody raises hands here. No. So we have a first here. So Felipe, please open your mouth.
Hi, hi, Nicolas.
Hello.
Thanks for the interest. How are you? Thanks for the very nice talk. I'm curious on not only Kawar but on Kawar case. It's clear that the two-layer model is probably more realistic than just a simple hydrostatic equilibrium Maclaurin object. Just to mention, my camera is not working, so that's why I'm not with the video. Okay, sorry. Okay. So of course it's a more realistic model, the two-layer. But what if we consider three-layer or even a gradient on the density? Would we see a clear deviation from the two-layer model, or wouldn't it be detectable? I mean, the precision or the difference would be so small that we cannot detect.
Yeah, indeed, we start from the two-layer model because it is the simpler model. And if you add more layers, in that case, you have more and more degree of freedom. And so at the end, you will obtain a mini class of models. So you have to try to distinguish between the models, and at present, the simple model seems the good first step. And but if you want to put, for example, a gradient of density inside a body, you need to combine different observations. From the shape is not. You need more observations coming from.
You mean it wouldn't make or a big difference in the shape, but then you would need more information on the composition or something like this.
Yeah, because it's not a non-unique solution. Here, for example, this is for Phoebe, where
Yeah.
we have pretty good observations. And here you have the two-layer models. So we find a family of models in this part. And what you can see is that then also you have solutions for the three-layer models.
Mhm.
So if you add the models, you add the degree of freedom, and then it's difficult to separate which one is a good one, if it is two-layer or three-layer model. So
Okay.
you need to add a different set of observations.
Okay. As you said, we have new data on color, and we are working on it. So we
Yeah.
may have a very good size and shape determination. But this is a work in progress. I had another fast question exactly on this slide. What do you mean by non-physical solution?
Oh, here simply, for example, when you build an interior model, you have you put constraint on the size of the radius of the mantle and the size of the ice layer and the size of the free layer. And when you invert the solutions, here the size of the mantle is larger than the size of the ice layer.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
I see.
it's just non-physical at all.
Okay.
Okay. And I am super impatient to see your observation from Kawa.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Felipe. So, Heli Branco?
Hi, can you listen to me?
Yeah.
Hello?
So,
Yes?
hello. So thank you, Dr. Humbo, for the presentation. It was very cool. I do have a couple of, kind of simplistic questions, but so when you talked about that geophysical model you presented with the layers, how did you assess the porosity problem? Like, did you assume a specific value, like 20% in volume? How did that play into the problem?
For the porosity, indeed, when the body is a crate at the formation, for the trans-Neptunian object, the geophysical models provide you porosity about 50%. And this is from accretion models. And then there are some thermal evolution models. And in that case, if the body heat, you lose a degree of porosity depending of the timing of the heating. And at the end, you diminish the degree of the porosity. But the porosity could also come from the impact. As you can see that Phoebe, it is a heavily crater surface. So the impact will also generate macro porosity. So for that macro porosity, you can expect between 10 20%. It's not very clear what are the exact degree of porosity.
Is there any way to assess like how much porosity do you have on those objects? Because like I know from some readings, the smaller expected to have somehow higher porosity than the bigger TNOs. But I don't know if there's like a method to assess, so it will be around 20% or something like that, or is that even possible?
Of 20, oh, you can go until 50%. It's you can look at the Castillo-Rogers paper in 2019. And you can see here you have a KBO with a density of 0.5. So you need a lot of porosity. Also, you have a lot of porosities for in comets. For the comets, the porosity is also, if I remember, about 60%, 60. So it could be very important. You could have a very porous object.
Okay, thank you very much. And I do have another, again, sorry for the simple question. It's regarding those porous layers and ice layers. How did you get to the thickness they have in your model? Like
the thickness
was obtained from the model, or you assume the specific thickness and then calculate it?
For the porosity, we assume the thickness here. So we impose the 10 and 15 kilometers. And then here we just know the mean density of the body. So if you fix all the other parameters, we have 1 degree of freedom, and so you can you compute it to respect the mean density.
Oh, I see. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Felipe, do you still have another question? No.
Oh, sorry. Forgot.
Okay, no problem. Oh, I have probably a very silly question, naive one. At the beginning of your talk, you were saying when you have a homogeneous body, for instance, if you have a very elongated body, like Haumea,
Yes.
if it is homogeneous, let's say it has that shape, but if it has 2 layers, for instance, it has 2 different materials, you have a more dense one in the center, that would reduce this ellipticity in the equatorial shape. Is that right?
Yes, with respect to with the same mean density body. Yes.
And so as we see Haumea, so we may, let's say, a kind of hint that it would be a tendency to be more homogeneous because it's so elongated. Because if it has I'm calling core, nucleus that's much more dense, it would avoid this kind of shape, would it not? I don't know, it's a kind of very simple thought.
Yeah,
it's more complex than that, but
I'm not sure I catch your argument.
let me try again. If, for instance, in the case of Haumea, you have that shape. If, let's say, you have 2 possibilities. It is homogeneous or it has 2 kind of materials, more dense in the center. But if it has it's more dense in the center, it would be expected for the effect of the equatorial elongation be smaller than if it is just a homogeneous body. So just with this simple thought, can I think that first guess would be more probable that it is homogeneous?
No, because if it is homogeneous, it will not, due to the density, due to the mean density, you cannot have a Jacobi equilibrium figure for Haumea. So because it will expose, you will have a fission. So you need more material to keep the body together.
Yeah, but if you, I understand, but if you have a denser center, denser core, it would not force, let's say, to avoid a body so extended one. It's a kind of limiting case. That's the point. Probably Haumea is an extreme case.
Yes. Yeah,
can I comment on this?
Yes, please.
Sorry. So, as you know, and Humboldt knows for sure, we measured Haumea with stellar rotation, and we exactly saw that it's not so elongated as expected from a Jacobi shape. It is not on a Jacobi shape exactly because it probably has a denser core, and then it's preventing to be so elongated as expected from a Jacobi. So it's exactly your idea, but it can still be elongated even if it has a denser core.
Okay. So it cannot. That's the answer.
Yeah, it cannot be
so elongated.
Jacobi.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
From the density, the density we measured.
So I think you answer my question. So if it's so elongated, it could not be so elongated even if it has a 2-layer model.
It would be even more elongated if it was a Jacobi.
Okay.
So we are seeing the signature of possibly a core, denser core.
Oh, I see. Okay. Thank you. So, anybody else?
Just one more provoking question for Nicola. So, do you think we cannot have any pure Maclaurin object in the solar system?
If the body is very large, usually you have a differentiation process that would act on the body. So you will have you will expect several layers, but also with the ice you could have aqueous alterations. So the bodies also could be more have partial differentiation. Like for example, for Ceres, what was observed is that you don't have a clear separate layers because you have a lot of water, and the water make alteration on the interior. So, I don't know if you could find exactly a Maclaurin body, but maybe you could find bodies that are close to Maclaurin, but that does not mean that they didn't evolve, but on the contrary, that they evolved a lot with the effect of the water.
Okay, so thank you. So the history of the object may lead it to be a Maclaurin. Not we need to consider these not only if it is big enough to have a differentiation. Yeah. Also, the geological history can bring it to a hydrostatic equilibrium.
Yeah.
Great.
It's important.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Felipe. So, anybody else? Any other comment, question? So, Nicola, we would like to thank you for the excellent presentation, very interesting results. So, we'll keep following your work because it's very interesting and connected to some kind of studies we have tried to do.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. And I'm sure that we will have many occasions to discuss on the shapes and the observation and the entire structure together.
Probably in person, I hope.
Yes, me too.
Okay, good. Now, just for finishing our meeting, we usually have 5-10 minutes if anybody has some news.